Hello, everyone. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for joining our first ever live event for Mrs. Wilson's Treatment Center for Women. We are so happy that you guys are here joining us this evening. For those who don't know me, my name is Abby Peters, and I have had the pleasure of serving on the board of directors for Mrs. Wilson's for the past 2 years. I am also a recovering member of Alcoholics Anonymous for 12 and a half years. I'm so grateful that you've taken this time tonight to join us for what we hope will be a moment to educate, inspire, and bring light to addiction and recovery. Each year, we host a gala where we celebrate the successes and advancements of our treatment services, as well as raise money to afford our organization the opportunity for continued growth. Due to the unfortunate circumstances of COVID-19, we had to postpone this year's in-person event. However, we're hoping that by using this virtual platform, that we are able to reach more people with our message tonight. Throughout the event, you can visit the chat room area where we have posted 3 different ways that you can donate if you are feeling called to do so. So at this time, I would like to introduce Sarah Elizabeth, the host of tonight's event. Sarah is a wife and mother of 3 teenage boys who dedicates much of her free time giving back to the AA community who helped her get sober 8 years ago. Sarah is passionate about helping others in and outside the rooms of AA every day. Additionally, she produces and hosts a recovery podcast called Sober Gratitudes. You should check it out. The links are in the chat room. And she gives the opportunity for people to share their stories of hope in recovery. So without further ado, I introduce to you Sarah.
Thank you, Abby, and good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to be hosting an amazing event honoring this incredible treatment center, the staff, and the women and families they serve. We have 2 amazing speakers whose stories will no doubt inspire you. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce to you and tell you a bit about our Executive Director, Michelle Reyes, who will share some exciting information about the house. Michelle Reyes became Executive Director of Mrs. Wilson's 3 years ago. Passionate about addiction recovery, she began work as a counselor intern in 2012 while pursuing a master's in social work at Rutgers University. In that time, she worked with skilled mentors and honed her gifts as a compassionate and wise caregiver. Coupled with her business acumen and fair-mindedness, she has navigated staff and residents through 6 years of stability. The low turnover of staff and counselors, rare in this field, is attributable to her trusted leadership. Indeed, during this unique time of pandemic, not one resident or employee has become ill with COVID-19, a remarkable accomplishment. Finally, every good leader needs a sense of humor, and Ms. Reyes is no exception. The oversight and daily upkeep of a 120-year-old Victorian home, serving as both offices and residents, comes with new surprises every day. We are especially grateful to Michelle for her sense of humor and take it in stride but do it attitude that supports us all. I am proud to introduce our Executive Director, Michelle Reyes.
Thank you, Sarah, for the introduction and your encouraging words. I'm so excited for this event tonight and to have you all with us. Thank you all for your continued support and commitment to the mission of Mrs. Wilson's and the beloved women and families in our communities. Anyone who's joining us tonight for the first time, we thank you for your presence and support and hope that you will become as impassioned by recovery and the women we serve as we are. It is my honor to share with you about Mrs. Wilson's continued growth and increased service, not only to the community of Morris County, but throughout the state of New Jersey for the last 44 years. Mrs. Wilson's Halfway House was founded as a private nonprofit organization in 1976 by 3 visionary women. These women saw a need for a residence that provides structure, discipline, guidance, and support for women in early recovery from substance abuse. The house takes its name from Lois Wilson, wife of Alcoholics Anonymous co-founder Bill Wilson. It is a home where women begin to learn to live life without alcohol or drugs. The corporate name Alfree Inc. derives from the phrase alcohol-free, a condition the founders were striving to ensure. Since opening its doors in 1976, Mrs. Wilson's has grown from being one of the first of its kind recovery homes for women to becoming a licensed halfway house treatment program with 18 residential beds serving women with substance use and co-occurring disorders. The general length of stay is 6 to 8 months, during which time the women receive group and individual therapy from fully licensed and passionate clinicians to address trauma, relapse prevention, and psychoeducation, all while working in the community and residing in a safe environment. Next door to the halfway house is Tomlinson Three-Quarter House, which is available to 6 women who successfully complete the halfway house program or one similar to it. Residents of Tomlinson House can stay up to 1 year, living independently while continuing to receive support through counseling. In addition to the halfway house and Tomlinson House, Mrs. Wilson's offers services to women from the community through outpatient and intensive outpatient services, as well as family and couples counseling for all of our clients. During these difficult times and in spite of COVID-19, Mrs. Wilson's continues to strive. In the last 6 months, we have had an occupancy rate of 95% in our halfway house, and 5 strong and resilient women have successfully completed the program and moved on to the next step in their road to recovery. We also have 1 woman who will be graduating next week. Tomlinson House has had an occupancy rate of 85% in the last 6 months, as 3 women have moved on to independent housing. With great gratitude, I also report that all of the clients we serve in the halfway house and our devoted staff members have remained in good health thus far during the COVID-19 pandemic without any positive cases. The early actions and interventions, as well as the ongoing support received from our dedicated board of directors and community, have allowed for everyone's overall emotional and physical well-being during these trying times. Thanks to our generous donors and benefactors, not only has there been success and growth in our treatment services, but Mrs. Wilson's has had the opportunity to make physical and structural improvements to the beautiful Victorian house, which is over 100 years old, where all of the treatment services are offered. In the last couple of years, Mrs. Wilson's has had the opportunity to renovate the back and front porches, resident kitchen and dining areas, foyer, living room, and clinical offices. In the last year, the resident bedrooms, hallways, group room, and Serenity Garden have also been renovated. All of these improvements have allowed for a more welcoming and safe environment for the 18 women who call Mrs. Wilson's home. We hope and plan to continue offering life-saving services for many more years to come and hope that you will join us in this journey. We now have the honor of introducing to you Caitlin, our alumni speaker for the night. I have had the blessing of witnessing Caitlin's growth and journey firsthand. She graduated our halfway house program in January 2018 before residing in Tomlinson House for 1 year. Today, Caitlin works in the field of addictions. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Hi, I'm Caitlin. I'm an alcoholic. My sober date is December 16, 2016. I just want to start by saying that Mrs. Wilson's holds a very special place in my heart today. That's the place where I built my foundation of the beautiful life I live, and I am very grateful and very honored Michelle asked me to speak tonight. So I guess I'll start at the beginning and how I got to Mrs. Wilson's. I'm one of 5 kids. I come from a long line of alcoholics. Me and my brother are both alcoholics and addicts. I grew up watching my brother struggle with his addiction. Watching him struggle with addiction it really hurt my heart as a kid. And I remember at a young age driving around with my dad looking for him in Camden, New Jersey, because that's where I'm from, South Jersey. Because of my brother, we ended up moving down to my shore house right outside of Atlantic City, Brigantine, New Jersey. I started drinking and abusing drugs when I was 15. I ended up getting a really bad pill habit at the age of 18. I thought I was a functioning addict because I drank, I did drugs, but I went to school. I graduated high school with very good grades. I ended up going to college and I was working at Atlantic City Hospital. So I was pretty functioning up until I wasn't. So I ended up becoming an IV heroin user at the age of 24. My life spun out of control very quickly. The guy I was with was a heroin addict, and we ended up living in motels. I didn't want to go to my parents' house. I just kept on running and running and running. I ended up getting my first arrest at 25. I ended up getting PTI for that. I could not get a day sober at all. Within a year of being on PTI, I caught 2 more charges. And then after that was when I became in the vicious cycle of in and out of treatment facilities, in and out of jail. I just couldn't get sober, and I didn't want to. I just kept on doing what I wanted to do, running my own program. I went to, I think all in total, I went to 14 rehabs, and I just didn't want to get help. So 3 days before my 29th birthday, I decided to get high, and I found my boyfriend of 8 years dead of an overdose. You would think that would want to get me sober, but it didn't. I fell into a huge depression to the point where I used drugs every night, and I wanted to die. I tried to kill myself, and I would wake up every morning angry, miserable, sick, that I even woke up the next day. I was so depressed. I was so hurt. I ended up getting another violation of probation, and I went to court December 15th, the last day I ever used any substance. I was with my father, and me and my dad have a very close relationship. He's like, to this day, like my best friend. And he took me to court that day, and they locked me up in front of my dad. And my dad had never seen him like tearing up. Like, I watched him watch me get locked up, and he looked like he was gonna cry. And it broke my heart. I think it was like one of my like moments of clarity, like, wow, this disease isn't only hurting me, it's hurting everyone around me. So I went to jail, and I can still remember how I felt. I always had like physical rock bottoms. Like, I lost everything. I would get sober for a couple months and I would gain it back. But this time it was different for me. I felt at peace walking into that jail. It was the first time I had an emotional bottom, and I lost my mind. I was like hallucinating in there, crying, like just completely like just lost. I didn't even know who I was. And I went back to court from jail, and I signed on to drug court. They sent me to a long-term facility in Atlantic City where I ran at, and I stayed, and I wanted to leave every single day, but I didn't. I just kind of pushed through the pain. And I had some behavioral issues there, and I thought I was going home to an Oxford house, and they told me I was going to a halfway house, and boy, was I upset. So they gave me a choice, and for some reason, I'm like, let me try this Mrs. Wilson's in North Jersey. And so they sent me up there, and I was like still in that mindset where I'm on drug court. I'm just gonna do whatever they tell me to do. I'm gonna do the minimum there, 6 months. If I stay under the radar, you know, I've been to enough treatment facilities knowing that if I stay under the radar, I don't get in trouble, I'll get out on time. I figured out quickly that that wasn't the case. I actually distinctly remember my first session with my counselor, and I'm like, how long is this program? She's like, 6 to 9 months. And I said, oh, okay. I'm getting out 6. And she just looked at me and I was like, okay. And I remember she kept asking me all these questions and I was like, oh, my life's perfect. My life's fine. And because that's how I grew up. Everything's okay. I don't talk about things. And meanwhile, I'm there because I've had a 10-year run on opiates. But slowly but surely that my perspective started to change. When I was at Mrs. Wilson's, it was the first time I was in a place where I felt I was being taken care of and that I was in the right place and these people actually care about me and they want me to recover and they want me to do well. I got a job right away. I got a sponsor right away. I think once I started getting into my step work and then after I did a 3 and starting my 4, I was realizing like, wow, like I'm seeing a really positive change in myself. I worked on a lot while I was at Mrs. Wilson's. My counselor was amazing with me with the grief and loss of Chris dying, my boyfriend. And, you know, I struggled with that. And we found ways where I would write him letters and just little things. And I started to slowly get some spirituality in my life, which I didn't have that either before. I became accountable. I went to work every day. I showed up on time for group on time. I came home for curfew every day at the same time. And accountability was something I never had. I was spoiled rotten. My parents bailed me out of everything. And it was nice to actually learn how to live. Like they helped me save money. I never had money in the bank ever. I couldn't, whether I was doing drugs, shopping, anything, I couldn't save $1. And Mrs. Wilson's like taught me how to be an adult and do these things. With the PTSD of finding my boyfriend dead on a bathroom floor, seeking safety, that helped me so much. Like I got so many coping skills out of that. Like one of the coping skills was inspire yourself, carry a picture with you. I still do that to this day. Like grounding, I learned that there. And I constantly, to this day, I have to do these things. I'm just so grateful for everything I learned from Mrs. Wilson's house. Today, like I still use some of the stuff with the clients I work with at the treatment center I work at, and they love it. Like I print out like literally like sheets from the Seek and Safety book that I use there. Today I have over 3.5 years sober. God willing, in December I'll have 4 years. I couldn't even get a day together 5 years ago. It's amazing to me. I owe a lot to Mrs. Wilson's because of the coping skills and my AA network. Like I became a accountable woman with integrity today, and I owe a lot to them. I'm super grateful. I'm so grateful that I was asked to speak tonight. That's my jam. Thank you. Oh, and please don't forget to donate.
Wow, Caitlin, that story was so inspiring, and you show just how wonderful Miss Wilson's house is. The services they provide, it shows in your life today. So congratulations, and thank you so much for sharing such an inspiring story. So I hope at this time you are all enjoying yourselves. And for those of you who may have arrived late to the Zoom event, please take advantage of the feature where you can see links to where you can donate. Thank you so much. Okay. So now at this time, I am so thrilled to introduce our keynote speaker, Jen Elizabeth, who has graciously volunteered her time, all the way from California to be with us this evening and share her incredible story. Jen, who has over 9 years of sobriety, is a recovery speaker, blogger, and author of Shape of a Woman. And for this event, she has donated 40 signed copies of her memoir to Mrs. Wilson's. Jen is a fierce presence on many social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and she has her own personal website called resurrectionofme.com. She is an inspiration to many, courageously sharing her story with humility. Jen has been a guest on many podcasts and on YouTube channels in efforts to give hope, build awareness, and end stigmas about trauma and addiction. And now it is my honor to welcome our keynote speaker, Jen Elizabeth.
Hello, can everybody hear me? Awesome. Caitlin, that was such a great, thank you so much for sharing that. I relate to so much. And Sarah for that introduction. Wow. Let's hope I can be fierce tonight. So full transparency, I'm actually sick as you know what. But, you know, I did not want to miss tonight at all. I am truly so honored to be with all of you, and especially Mrs. Wilson's, because when a woman takes the steps to heal her life, she is not only transforming herself, she is changing the course of her children's lives and their children's lives and the lives of generations to come that she herself will not even be alive to see. When a woman takes the steps to heal her life, just her existence as she, goes about her day has the power to inspire healing journeys in every person who may come in contact with her. Healing women are capable of healing entire communities, which is why Mrs. Wilson's house or Mrs. Wilson's treatment center is so important. The magnitude of what is happening there is immeasurable. My name is Jen Elizabeth, as Sarah already said, and I am a healing woman. That is the most powerful statement about myself that I could ever make. I am a survivor of addiction, of the prison system. I am a survivor of cult abuse, childhood sexual abuse. I am a rape survivor. A survivor of abuse in my family, and a survivor of a multitude of ways of coping with trauma that did incredible harm to my mind, body, and spirit. Excuse me. And yet, despite all of the strength and resilience it takes, and that is required to survive so much, for most of my existence, I believed it was me who was broken. I believed it was me who was flawed. I believed I was powerless and incapable of living life like everyone else. I was wrong. I was way wrong. Sometimes we are born into pain, pain that does not even belong to us. But it can become the weight that we have to carry many times before we've even learned to stand on our own 2 feet. As a little girl, I would lay on the floor and I would press my face on the carpet so I could peer through the crack underneath the door and watch my mother in her bedroom. I just wanted to be close to her. I wanted her to care for me, to tell me I was good or pretty or smart, but she just couldn't. My mother has so much of her own pain that it is difficult for her to see anything else. She would tell me I was too much trouble or in the way. She would yell and often hallucinate and tell me I was going to hell. There was a lot of screaming and crying, and sweat, would be dripping from her face. She terrified me, and I loved her. She would break my spirit, and I idolized her. She would starve herself, and I would stop eating. When she was sad, I was sad. When she wanted to kill herself, I thought about ending my life too. Her pain became the reflection that I saw when I looked in the mirror. What I didn't know was that my mother suffers from severe and serious mental health conditions, and none of her behaviors were ever my fault. There was nothing that my little girl existence could have ever done to cause or explain the way my mother felt about or abused me. There was also nothing I could have ever done to change the way she felt about or abused herself. When a woman takes the steps to heal her life, it can literally change the way her children see themselves. Her healing can become their healing. Her love for herself can show them that they too are worthy of loving themselves. It is not just a woman transforming herself. Growing up, I became, more and more desperate for love, seeking attention from wherever I may find it, even if it hurt, even if it meant keeping secrets. And actually, keeping secrets came quite naturally to me. I was a born secret keeper. Being, taught and shown and told that we never share the truths of what's happening in our home with anyone ever, not even with ourselves. So when the elder from the church that my parents had joined began showing me special attention in his private office, I was already trained in how to shut the door so no one would find out. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused before they're 18 years old. And about 93% of children who are sexually abused are abused by someone they know and trust and often love. I am 1 in 4. That man sexually abused me until I was 10 years old, and I never told anyone. I never said stop. I never screamed. I never cried. I never even realized there was anything wrong with what was happening. At least it was affection. At least it was attention. At least it felt like love. I would just pull my little dress down and walk out and act like nothing had ever happened. I am also part of the overwhelming amount of people whose trauma is a gateway to substance use and addiction. In fact, the link between childhood trauma and addiction is stronger than the link between obesity and diabetes. That's huge, guys. This is why I talk about trauma. When I was 12, I found alcohol. My family had fled the church shortly before it was disbanded as a documented religious cult. But the memories of my time there stayed tucked deep in my bones somewhere. Flashbacks, smells, sounds, sensations, images coming in my nightmares. Anxiety, hypervigilance. I would lose track of time, which I now know is disassociation. Paranoia, depression, just a constant state of fear of being in my own body. And it became, more than I could bear. And I just felt so alone. I felt like there was no way out from underneath it all until I took that first drink. All the voices in my head that would tell me I wasn't good enough, that I was ugly and fat and disgusting and dirty and damaged and unloved and unlovable went quiet. The incessant thoughts of ending my life stopped almost instantly. And I believe I was an alcoholic from that very first drink. Because before that little glass was even halfway empty, I was already plotting and planning and scheming in my mind of ways I was going to get more and drink every day for the rest of my life, because it was the first peace I had ever known. Alcoholism is not about how much or how often a person consumes. It's about the motives. It's about the need. It's about the obsession. And I obsessed and needed constantly. And I drank and drank and drank and drank. And then I began finding the kids in school who were doing more than partying than just on the weekends, because I was not using to party. I have used and always used substances to survive being Jen, to survive being in my own skin. And in my early 20s, I had to have a wisdom tooth pulled, and I was prescribed Vicodin. And you will hear this story over and over and over again as the beginning to almost everyone's heroin addiction. It is super, super common. It was like another monumental moment where instantly that beast of shame that was living in like every corner of my being was silenced. And I was hooked. I was free. It was a solution. It saved me. In a way, it saved me. And I began doctor shopping and ER hopping and asking anybody that I knew if they happen to have leftover pain pills in their medicine cabinet. And I would see my friends' faces and the look of disgust as my life was just crumbling all around me. I found people on the streets to sell me pills, and I started spending all my money. I lost my job. I lost my apartment. I lost my car. I lost any resemblance of normalcy that I may have managed to create for myself. It was gone. But worse than all that is that I was gone. Who I was in my heart was gone. When I was introduced to heroin and a needle, I didn't think twice. I was in terrible withdrawals from not having pills. And if you've ever been through withdrawals, I see Caitlin shaking her head. You just got to go through it. You know, if you've never been through it, God bless you. If you have, then you understand what I'm talking about. It's terrible. And B, I already hated myself anyways. But the real truth of it is, I had always hated myself. The real truth of it is that I had always felt worthless. So it was no question for me. I just put my arm out. I spent close to 13 years IV heroin and meth user, living in cars, motels, flop houses, abandoned buildings, under bridges. I've eaten from dumpsters, urinated on the streets, you know, you name it, like a movie, like you'd see in the movies. I was robbed and raped under the bridge that I was living in by two men who said they wanted to buy heroin from me. And again, I didn't see that there was anything wrong with that. I remember just standing up and spitting the dirt out of my mouth and gathering myself together and saying, this is what I deserve. This is what I get. This is the life that I am meant to live. My teeth started turning black and breaking off. I had abscesses and sores and track marks all over my body. In and out of drug psychosis, and in and out of jails and mental institutions more times than I could count. But none of that felt worse to me than having to face my childhood. None of that was more painful than the pain that I had been running from my entire life. Eventually, the courts got sick of me and I was sentenced to state prison. I would be led in with shackles and handcuffs and, you know, waist chains. My head would be down. I couldn't even look at anybody, and I could smell the heroin coming from my skin. And I'd be sweating and sick and trying not to go to the bathroom on myself. And I felt like an animal. And I lived like an animal. And I didn't think I was worth anything more than being treated like an animal. And about halfway through my prison sentence, I ended up doing a little over 2 years in state prison. And about halfway through my prison sentence, I had a moment that I call a divine intervention. A just indescribable sensation came over me, and all the sound left the room. And all of a sudden, it finally hit me at 34 years old that maybe, just maybe, I don't want to die. And this little teeny spark ignited that believed just a little bit that maybe I was worth a tiny bit more than overdosing, in a riverbed or under a bridge all alone. And as a transient whose identification would be pending for who knows how long, I had nobody. I meant nothing to anyone on the streets. I had no idea, and I don't think anybody really has an idea, but I had no idea how much incredible power a tiny spark of just not wanting to die. I didn't see any future. I didn't have any dreams. I didn't have any goals. But just that spark of not wanting to die, how much incredible power those little sparks contain. And over the years, that little spark, excuse my language, has grown into a fucking raging fire that not even I can put out. That was May 1st, 2011. That is my recovery date, and I will never forget that day as long as I live. Call it God, call it the universe, call it your intuition, call it your connection to self, call it whatever you feel most comfortable with, but something big happened to me that day. Sitting in that, concrete cell on my metal bunk with nothing. I didn't own a pair of pants. All I owned was some soups in my locker. On that day, I chose to live. And even bigger than that, on that day, I chose me. And I dedicated myself to recovery. When I paroled, I learned how to make my bed every morning and brush my teeth and take care of my body. I began speaking in complete sentences. I had to basically relearn to read, and I began actually retaining, the words that I was reading in books. And eventually, inmate WA8838 was discharged from parole. I remember that number and I'll never forget it. And my life really started coming together. It really started resembling, I was learning how to human, basically. But when I was alone, I could feel my greatest enemy closing in on me. Shame. Shame is insidious. It will attach itself to everything we do, whether that's joy, accomplishments, sobriety, friendships, relationships, parenting, hopes, goals, and dreams. Shame convinces us that no matter what, no matter where we are from where we were, no matter who may be in our lives, no matter what we're doing, no matter what happens, we will always be unloved and unlovable. Drugs and alcohol were the only real tools I had ever known to survive myself. Removing those left me extremely vulnerable to being attacked from the demons of my childhood. I thought drugs and alcohol were my problem. I was told they were my problem. So I thought that if I removed them, I would be fixed. I would be at peace. You know, I was wrong. The prison system was wrong. Many treatment centers I went to were wrong. Many friends in the fellowship were wrong. And at close to 2 years in recovery and pregnant with my firstborn son, I contemplated ending my life. I was working the program as hard as I could, yet I was tormented by fear. I was tormented by self-loathing. I was having flashbacks and anxiety and nightmares and disordered eating and cutting myself and panic. Solid panic. I believed I was broken. I thought that real life and real recovery wasn't possible for someone like me. I thought I was doing recovery wrong somehow. And one night I came to another crossroads in my life. Alone in the dark, I Googled courageously and slowly child abuse. I had never really let that word abuse sink in before that night. I had always viewed myself as a participant because I had always kept everything a secret. And that's what secrets do. Secrets somehow twist and mutate inside of your silence and take on a form that becomes your shame. I know now that those were never my secrets. And that was never my shame. Those are their secrets. That's their shame. My family, the cult, my rapists. And today I release myself from every single one of them. Words become thoughts, thoughts turn into beliefs. So over the years, I actually have changed the words that I say to myself, that I say to other people, because words are powerful. And some words are okay with some people, some words really harm others. For me, the term forgiveness, self-forgiveness, became very heavy for me to carry, because the true meaning of forgiveness, the way that I absorb it, means that there was some sort of wrongdoing or action that could have changed the course of the way things went. So I no longer work on forgiving myself for anything in my childhood, because there is nothing to forgive myself for. And I also don't even use the term self-forgiveness in regards to my rape. Abuse is always the responsibility of the abuser. And I'm going to say that again. Abuse is always the responsibility of the abuser. No exceptions, no matter what. So today I just release myself. And that night in front of the computer screen, I learned the greatest lesson of my entire life. I learned that I'm not alone. The power of knowing that you are not alone, that there are people who are speaking about the very things that you were sure, you could never utter, is, again, it's immeasurable. I read all my symptoms over and over and over again in every link that I clicked. Everything that I was sure were the signs that I was just too far gone to ever come back from were being openly spoken about. People were healing. People were talking about things with each other. People were supporting each other and believing each other. That is something I'd never had before. And I saw the word trauma for the first time. Trauma is not what happens to us, it is what happens inside of us. And all trauma is valid. I should repeat that one again too. All trauma is valid. Shame will have us screwing ourselves over by saying that our trauma isn't real enough, that it's not bad enough, that it's different, that it's, you know, our fault, our responsibility. No, all trauma is valid. And trauma does shape the way we see ourselves and the way we see the world around us. You know, but I am here to tell you that we are not bound to how we have been shaped. Trauma survivors are fighters. We have always been the heroes in our own stories. We just didn't realize it. We just didn't know it. All of the trauma responses that maybe were seen as bad behaviors or disorders and all that stuff, those were us surviving shit that most people can't even fathom. And we are heroes, and we've always been the heroes in our own stories. And I dug my heels in that day or that night, and I began to advocate for myself and the quality of my recovery, the quality of my recovery path. And I started on my healing journey. Many of the, what most people would call character defects, were really just trauma responses. And I stopped trying to fix myself. And I began showing myself compassion instead. Recovery saved my life, no doubt. I literally cannot put together or explain or make any logical sense of how I'm alive today. But trauma work saved my recovery. And, you know, fast forward, you know, to today, I have expanded far and wide and around my traditional recovery path. I have a giant toolbox, but not because I'm broken, but because I am inherently worthy of every single thing that this life has to offer. I have never been worth anything less than I am right now. Anyone watching this has never been worth anything less than they are right now. Even in jail, even in treatment, even on the streets, even selling your body, even selling drugs. Your worth has never changed. Your worth has always been the same. The little girl in my childhood whose mommy said she was no good, and whose pastor said that the only way to be good was to allow him to hurt her. The woman with the missing teeth and black teeth and abscesses and track marks living under the bridge. The prisoner with no possessions to her name. I carry each one of them home with me, and I hold them as tight as I can, and I love them the way that they have always deserved to be loved. And today I know what real love is. And it's not having to lay down or pretend I'm sleeping and let whoever may want to touch me. And it's not keeping secrets. And it's not swallowing everything I'm worthy of saying. Real love comes from me. It's every time I stand in my truth, no matter who may get uncomfortable. It's every time I face the pain that I was, desperate and willing to die to avoid. Every single thing that I thought was too damaged or too disgusting for anyone to ever love or even look at became the very things that built me to be the woman I am today. We all have a story. And no matter what that story is, we don't ever need to hide it. We don't need to throw it away. We don't need to be embarrassed of it or ashamed of it or fix it. We water it. We honor it. We love it. And we watch it grow. Because it is in the cracks of who we are where the power to heal our lives is found. It's in the cracks of my broken heart where the real treasures of who I am live. It's not in the shiny parts. It's not in the put together parts. It's in the messy parts. It's in the parts I hated. It's in the parts that everyone looked at me weird for. That's my gold. That's the power that I have today. And when women take the steps to heal and own every single word of their stories, watch the fuck out, because the entire world is about to light up. I'm proof. I see it. I see it on my screen right now. I see it every day. I speak to people every day. And I'm getting a huge glare. If I could leave one thing with each of you tonight, it would be to tell you that you are all worthy. Not because of anything else, but because you are born inherently worthy. Just as you are. Just as you've always been. And when you dig deep and really harness that worth, the shackles that we put ourselves in break free. That is all. Thank you.
Wow. Jen, I have heard your story many times, but I find myself once again so incredibly moved and so inspired by your strength and your transparency. You are showing us all what courage looks like. And I'm so grateful that we connected and that you have been a part of this very, very important. Many thanks to you and Caitlin for your authenticity while telling your truths. Addiction and alcoholism do not discriminate. Recovery is absolutely possible when we are willing to accept help and do the work to heal. When we recover and share our stories, we give others who may be struggling hope. We are saving lives by sharing our stories and telling the truth. On behalf of all those affiliated with Mrs. Wilson's, thank you so much. Thank you so, so much for supporting this very important cause. We hope you found this event worthwhile, and we are so grateful for your time and your generous donations. We hope each of you walk away with a better understanding of how important Mrs. Wilson's is to the women within our community and for those to come. If you have any questions regarding this evening's events, or you would like to learn more about the treatment services, please feel free to visit our website's contact page. And thank you once again for being here together for this amazing event with some amazing people. It's been my greatest honor. Thank you all, and good night.